It definitely takes folks a lot of patience there and skill set, to successfully manage a project. And to your point, it is a business. You're buying a community, but it is a business, right? It's a very complex business, but you're not just buying doors. You're buying a real business.
Your network is your net worth. Come listen to some of the most successful people I know share invaluable knowledge, stories, and advice in real estate, business, and beyond. This is Weiss Advice. Whether you want to take your business or personal life to the next level, look no further. Welcome back to another episode of Weiss Advice. I am your host, as always, Yonah Weiss, and grateful to be here today with Kyle McKinney. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Yonah. I really appreciate you having me on. Thank you so much.
It's my pleasure. No, thanks so much for having. Grateful to have been introduced by a mutual friend of ours, and we share a lot in common. And I
absolutely
love to always network with great people, especially in the commercial real estate industry. And you've made some waves. I mean, I don't want to get ahead of ourselves here, but for our listeners who don't know who you are, maybe just give a little background, a little context. Who are we speaking to today?
Yeah, so I am a commercial real estate investor and coach. I currently lead Pentagon Property Academy, which is an ecosystem of a community, also mentorship and educational products. Just to go back in my career, Act One was in the federal government space, consulting at the Pentagon, and then slowly started making my way over to commercial real estate through sports tech and entertainment consulting, and then landed in commercial real estate, launching an investment firm in 2015-16, took down a couple of properties with co-GPs or general partners and investors, and then was invited to run a sizable firm in Southern California as a C-suite executive, and then ultimately exiting to a REIT, real estate investment trust.
That was awesome.
Years ago.
That's
yes,
amazing.
indeed.
So obviously you've seen a lot of different things.
I've seen a lot. Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed.
No, it's great because it gives you a lot of perspective. I mean, even within commercial real estate, there is a lot. Obviously, it's a very wide spectrum. And even within that, you've had a pretty good experience in doing several different things.
Yes, indeed. Yeah, been very fortunate and blessed to be able to experience and see things from different perspectives, angles, learn from some great leaders and executives as well.
And what was that like exiting to a REIT? I'm sure that gave you a lot more freedom to kind of choose your next venture.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Exactly. And so, I mean, what an accomplishment, right? The firm that I joined was in their mature stage. They had started in the late or early 70s rather. So 50-year-old firm by the time I was brought in, and that was the number 2 under ownership, a passive ownership group. And, it really gave me, it enhanced my leadership chops. I mean, I was leading 45 employees, 7 direct executive reports, and had full P&L responsibilities, et cetera. And, really prepared me for that institutional exit, right? And what a great exit. I mean, I think that's everyone's dream. Hold a massive portfolio for 40, 50 years, right? And then, hey, we're done. Exit to a REIT and say, hey, what's next? Would I want to retire, or want to keep going, or maybe dabble in a couple other interests? So yeah, I was able to see that firsthand and experience that. So it was incredible.
That's amazing. And that was a self-storage company, correct?
Exactly. So about 700-800 million AUM. And so we had about a little more than half in self-storage. And then the other, let's say 1/3 was in office, industrial flex, retail, and some multifamily, mostly reserved for internal employees.
Oh, wow. Okay. So it's kind of pretty diverse there as well.
Exactly. Yeah. Pretty diverse portfolio.
Amazing. And you mentioned that you're currently working on a coaching school, basically a program where you help, real estate investors learn all there is to know essentially about investing in multifamily and really doing what a lot of people dream to do, which is leave their jobs and invest and be able to live off a passive income, or at least live off, active income, whatever that is, but doing it more kind of shaping your own space, right?
Yes, that's correct. And so our focus at Pentagon Property Academy is specifically asset management within the multifamily space. Mm-hmm. And so,
that's the most important part, I think.
Yeah. And I'm in agreement with you, Yona, because as we know, there's incredible folks out there that are putting an emphasis on capital raising. And I think that obviously is a lifeline or a bloodline of an investment firm, right? It's definitely a skill set to have. However, how I like to say is that's a 90, maybe 120-day window when you're raising capital for a particular deal that you're pursuing. And that's much shorter. That pales in comparison to the investment horizon of a 3 to 5 year investment horizon, right? And so once the keys are handed over to you for that Ferrari, I'll say that as an analogy, right? Because do you have the driver's license, meaning the asset management skill set to be able to drive this successfully and actually execute on the business plan that is going to return the investor capital that you promised or projected to them during that capital raising effort. And so that's what we focus on. How do you take the budget from the pro forma and actually extract that and creating a budget, and how
Absolutely.
do you collaborate with property management? How does they report to you? And
how not to lose your investors' money, right?
Exactly, right? That is the flashing neon sign, right? Every day. So absolutely. So that's what we focus on. And it's essentially, in a nutshell, helping our clients and institutionalize their firm, right? With that asset management component.
That's awesome. And obviously the name of it has something to do with your previous career. I'm assuming Pentagon Property Academy. You worked with the Pentagon. Tell me a little bit about that, because obviously it had a significant impact on your life in the early stage of your career to, carry over to name your newest venture after.
Yes, absolutely. So fortunate that the Pentagon has had a prominent, substantial presence in my life and my personal life as well. Being my father is a retired colonel, served in the United States Air Force. So thank you to all the veterans who have served and currently serving. So that's one, right? So he had 3 tours at the Pentagon. He was there on 9/11. And as I was nearby attending high school in Fairfax, Virginia. So that was a day that actually holds significance in everyone's, life, right? That was alive then. And then you look a few years later, and here I am working at the Pentagon in the corridors that my father roamed, and working, as a 24, 25-year-old at the Pentagon, briefing senior executive service leaders, the top-notch creme de la creme of the Department of Defense with 3 4-star generals, and working on initiatives and efforts that have global impact, right? And especially under that time, Secretary Gates, Robert M. Gates, was the Secretary of Defense. And so working and executing his initiative. So very fortunate to be able to have that experience, which just shaped me. Didn't realize it at a 24, 25-year-old, with that mindset, so to speak, but definitely see how its significance has perpetuated itself throughout my entire career and given me opportunities and just lifelong lessons.
Yeah, absolutely. So you were in an official capacity as a soldier, as enlisted. I'm just trying to understand what you were doing, what you're actually, unless it's classified. You don't have to, go into the details.
Yeah. So no, I have not served. So yes, I thank you for, asking for that clarification. So no, I did not serve. Let's say consultant. I was a consultant through a government contracting firm. Yes.
So basically, you were a spy, essentially.
Yeah, that was it, right? Exactly.
let's just say it like it is.
You're a spy. Yeah.
Covert operations. Yeah,
exactly.
Oh, very cool. Funny. That's funny. Yeah. No. So it's a great name. I'm always curious to know names. People choose names of their companies, and it has significance, and clearly it does. And you talked about asset management, which is a little underrated for some people who are getting into the investing space, are looking at figuring out what is the, how do we most capitalize on our investment? But really asset management is, like I said, it's underrated, but it's, like you mentioned earlier, the most important thing, coordinating and making sure the pro forma, right, comes to life and the goals that you wanted with the investment come to fruition. I'm curious to know, during your experience, and obviously you've had extensive experience in this, what are some of those kind of key things that get overlooked in asset management that, really should be focused on more and focused on in terms of how can I maximize the returns and how can I maximize the actual fruition of the property, once you take it over and once you get moving on the project?
Absolutely. Great question. So I have a few actually. So I would say number one is financial reporting. And I think an over reliance or over dependence on the property management software to be the end all be all of business intelligence. And so oftentimes these property management firms or software companies, yes, they'll report, you can extract reports on rent roll, T12s, et cetera.
Right.
However, what I like to say is that every number has a story. And oftentimes the numbers and the data that are contained in that software do not tell the entire story. Right. And so it's like, how do we put together a narrative that is factual, accurate, and paints a picture so that we can start seeing trends or uncovering trends and patterns? For example, if we're seeing unit turns that are, we projected or budgeted for $1,500, but they're actually, the actual is $1,800. We need to know that, so to starting to, asking questions, why? Maybe it's material costs, it's labor costs, it has to do with seasonality, et cetera, et cetera. And oftentimes, like to say to folks, there also is an over reliance on Excel because we're doing financial modeling in Excel. However, I implore and challenge our community to start using Tableau. You can have a subscription to Tableau for free, or obviously you can pay for it. But this is the data business intelligence now taking life and being presented in a visual manner so we can quickly uncover these insights. And instead of if we're just looking at a spreadsheet of numbers in Excel. So I see those two items. Also, I add a third in there. And also it's just one reason why I'm encouraged, to talk about asset management is because there is a skill gap. And then folks, there's a low barrier of entry in some ways as far as skill set. It's not, we have an industry that doesn't follow the linear path of a doctor that has to be licensed and 10 years of education plus, right? Folks can get into this space by going to a weekend boot camp, right? And if they can raise the capital, and show that they can be relied on by the broker community, they can close a deal, and so
unfortunately, there's a long way between being able to raise some money, close a deal, and then actually not losing all the money.
Exactly. Absolutely. And so I think, skill set, right? It's like folks, project management, construction timelines. Like, do you know that you need to have a Gantt chart to see, hey, this is when materials are being ordered. This is when they're going to hit our site. This is how long it's going to take to renovate this unit, et cetera, et cetera. And also leadership, right? Being able to lead teams simultaneously, whether it's property management, asset management, colleagues, investors, all of that.
What you said about the project management aspect, it's funny because I've heard several people who have coming from other, careers, being an engineer or a project manager in an engineering company or IT, something like that, and then making that transition into real estate. Now, I mentioned earlier, a lot of people, they want to leave their job. They want to find a path to financial independence. And real estate is that for a lot of people, but they're kind of intimidated to know, okay, it's a totally new industry. Like, am I going to be able to do it? Well, it's a business like any other business, right? And the project management aspect of it, I think, is probably one of the key components. So if you have any experience doing that, it's probably going to be, fairly relatively easy to kind of, obviously there's the learning gap, right? There's that curve that you need to take the time and probably get a mentor and have someone who's done it before, but learning how to underwrite, learning how to, and then manage the project. Exactly like you said, the construction management, working together with the property managers. It's not all too difficult. I mean, once you really, really understand it.
Oh, you're totally right, Yoda. You're totally right. I mean, it's those who have that experience getting into this industry obviously have a leg up, but it definitely takes a certain person. I think people's skills. This is where your soft skills come into play, and your patience. Because you're managing a lot of balls in the air. And sometimes you're managing remotely, right? And so
Yeah.
it definitely takes folks a lot of patience there and skill set, to successfully manage a project. And to your point, it is a business. You're buying a community, but it is a business, right? It's a very complex business, but you're not just buying doors. You're buying a real business.
I'm curious for you, having been in the commercial real estate space, doing multiple different things, why you chose to focus on multifamily as opposed to, I know you obviously had extensive experience in the self-storage space and other retail office, et cetera. What is it about the multifamily that really kind of piques your interest over other asset classes?
That's a great question. I think because multifamily is more labor intensive. We're seeing over the last few years, when it comes to self-storage, these remote management models being deployed, right? And so it's a humanless momentum, where, okay, we can have folks sort of self-care, so to speak. Well, not self-care, but also self-manage themselves, so to speak, through the rental process of a self-storage facility, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so without having any human contact, we're not there multifamily yet. And so it requires definitely more human capital. And then also there is, again, I saw a void, right? And asset management. And also we're seeing, yes, headwinds that we're experiencing as a community, interest rates, inflation, et cetera.
For sure.
However, I think there's an undercurrent of asset management, which is also unfortunately negatively impacting deals where it's all good when everyone's making money, but now things are tighter. And this is where we're in the trenches every day. And it's like, okay, this is where your skill set is going to shine, so to speak. And so it's definitely seeing that void in the market and saying, hey, I have this experience. Let me step in and help as many people as I can on these deals, whether small deals or large deals.
Yeah, there's certainly a lot that changes with the market as it changes. Obviously, you've seen it, having gone through some cycles and being able to kind of weather the storm, so to speak. But right now, I think for a lot of people, there's a lot of clarification happening in the market. Obviously, over the past year plus, the interest rates that have risen have shaken a lot of people to the core,
Absolutely.
especially those who had bridge debt and things like that. But the most important thing, I think, like you said, is the asset management, is being able to have a stable community, being able to, even with changes outside, in the environment around you, being able to stabilize a property and being able to make sure that not only are you not losing money, you're actually making money, right? Which is the goal. It's a business. You want to be making money, right? And yes, when interest rates were extremely low, it was really easy for everyone and their mother to make a lot of money. Unfortunately, that's not how real estate is really. It's a long-term investment. I mean, you talked about the company you work for, a 50-year, that's like the life cycle of a real estate investment firm. Is like, yeah, it's a 50-year plan, right? And you have to kind of set out that way, right? Otherwise, you're gonna be like, oh yeah, we're gonna sell in 3 to 5 years. Like, you're thinking very short, even 3 to 5 years. That's very short-term thinking.
It is absolutely, and it's almost a fix and flip type of model, right? But like you said, if the buy and hold, you have a long-term thinking, like, hey, I'm in this for 50 years. Each investment is 10 years plus. Definitely, that's where these skill sets come into play.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you see any trends happening? I mean, I don't like to talk about like making predictions or anything like that in terms of where the market's going. But what have you seen? I mean, as an investor yourself, anything that's kind of popped out in terms of what you've actually seen happening and those around you?
Yes, absolutely. So I think I can speak to the headlines that just recently Jerome Powell, as of this taping, said, hey, inflation isn't where we actually want it to be right now. So the rates might not be coming as quick as we thought they were or anticipated. So I'm sure that's sent tremors throughout the market, right? I think we're seeing, unfortunately, is, investor capital calls, and that are, again, negatively impacting the sector. I think we'll see a rise. Obviously, loan maturities are happening. And so we'll see institutional players come in and try to buy deals, dollars, pennies on the dollar, so to speak. I think we'll also see a correction of folks exiting the space just because we had a great run there's a correction. Maybe there was some bad asset management that was deployed or not sound asset management. Obviously, the larger the deal, the larger the acquisition fees, asset management fees, et cetera. So I think there was also a dependence on that, it's like, okay, well, we can't be as fee driven, because now actually we do have to deploy sound asset management. So I think those who are willing to stick it out, maybe skill up, maybe partner with more experienced sponsors, institutional players, I think will have a great next 5 to 10 years, if they're able to sustain themselves.
Yeah, no, it sounds pretty accurate from what I've gathered as well. The scariest thing for a lot of people is those capital calls that are happening that, even though they're seemingly unexpected, I mean, it's all written there in the operating agreement you sign, and getting involved in the investment, you have to realize that every investment comes with risk, and it's just an unfortunate situation where it has to come to that. But nevertheless, it is part of the investment, life cycle. I mean, REITs and large, investment groups have been doing this as well for decades. So it's not anything new. It's just unfortunate for people who were duped a little bit. And I think that's where it's a little bit uncomfortable. And I've seen it, unfortunately, where you have some of these people who are touting themselves to be commercial real estate experts on social media when they really don't have a whole lot of experience. And then you end up taking on, bridge debt and very aggressive investments, taking tons of fees for themselves, right? And no shortage on that. And then, capital calls coming about. And that's really where it's shocking people.
Absolutely. Yep. You're totally right. I think, like I said, we'll see a correction, and I think it'll be good. I think we are riding the wave, very long, and like you mentioned, everyone was making money. And so everyone was happy. But, as Buffett says, when the tide rinses out, we'll see who was swimming naked. So to speak.
So, Exactly.
Yes, indeed.
Well, Kyle, I want to transition now to what we call the final four. And these are four questions that I like to ask all my guests. First question for you is, what's the worst job that you ever had?
Mowing the lawn. I do not like yard work. I had to do it during my childhood, obviously for allowance, but I did not like it at all. I mowed lawns in Texas in the middle of the summer. It's something that I hate, or do not like, I should say. But yeah, that was my first one. I'll stop there.
Okay, yeah, that's definitely something most people don't look forward to doing, but it needs to be done. Someone's got to do it.
Yeah, exactly.
Second question, what is a book you've read that's given you a paradigm shift?
Who Not How by Dan Sullivan, I believe Benjamin Hardy. I think I have that right.
Mm-hmm.
Major paradigm shift, essentially going from a mindset of how to who to, right? And so not looking so much as upskilling or skill acquisition for oneself, but saying, hey, if I have this deficiency, who do I have within my network that I can tap that can fill that void,
right? And
then create momentum such that a business partnership is formed or, a successful venture is created.
Absolutely. No, it's an awesome book. Definitely had it mentioned here on the show several times over the years. And actually one of my favorite books that I read in the most recent years. So definitely love that. We'll put in the show notes for anyone who hasn't read it yet. It's definitely a paradigm shift. Definitely something that can literally change the way that you operate. And more successfully, obviously, free up more time, which is, I think, what everyone's goal is.
Absolutely. Totally.
Third question is, what is a skill or talent that you would like to learn? It could be anything, say, scuba diving, whatever.
Oh, yeah. So I'm on this language kick, and I know, obviously, English. I know a bit of Spanish, but I would love to learn Italian. And so it's a romantic language that is let's say, very close to Spanish. And so I have my Duolingo app that I am looking forward to diving back into it. But I love language. I love traveling in Europe. So, Italian.
That's awesome. Yeah, I love that. I love that. And I love that, it comes up quite often in terms of this question. Languages. Love it. So let's move on to the fourth and final question, which is, what does success mean to you?
One of the ways I define success is if I'm able to call someone in my time of need and they pick up, that means that I have done right by them. That means I have been a good person. That means I'm respected, admired, because when I was in grad school, was one of my goals, right? All 70 plus classmates, like, hey, when I'm able to call you in 10 years, like, hey, I need a favor, or I need your thoughts on, this financial model I'm putting together.
Right.
Can I call you, and did I make a big enough and lasting and positive enough impression on you in the 2 years we were in school together to be able to do that 10, 20 years down the line?
Wow.
I think that's powerful. And so
that's awesome.
That's what success looks like for me.
And have you seen that? Is that,
oh yeah.
Has been your experience?
Oh yeah. Absolutely.
No, it's funny because a good friend of mine, when debating whether or not to go to grad school for an MBA years ago, I remember asked someone, a mentor of his, and he said, what you can learn in the grad school in terms of the education, you can learn without going to grad school. But the networking and the possibilities that come from the opportunities of the people that you'll meet and spend time with are priceless.
I wholeheartedly agree, I wholeheartedly agree. I was early on in my life, I was fortunate that my father taught me that, son, more than half of your success will come from how likable you are. And I tell everyone out there listening, be likable, be like Shaq. Everyone loves Shaq, right? So, and that's why he's had a post-basketball, a successful post-basketball career. You see him on TNT, you see him on the commercials, etc. And I've been fortunate to meet him in a short amount of time, but he's a likable guy and people like that. And so they'll train you on anything that you need to know, but be likable, be someone that someone wants to go to dinner with, invite you over to their homes, and their family. Yeah, absolutely.
That's awesome. Well, love that definition. Kyle, where can our listeners find you or reach out to you if they want to?
Yeah, so I'm on Instagram at I am Kyle McKinney, KyleMcKinney. Again, I am Kyle McKinney on Instagram. Also, my email is Kyle at Pentagon PA standing for Property Academy. So, .com. So please feel free to reach out. We'd love to connect with folks if you're experiencing asset management challenges or want, me to put some eyes on your business. We'd love to hear from you. Get in touch, please.
Awesome. Well, we'll make sure to put all that in the show notes and love it. Really appreciate you coming on the show and joining me, share some very valuable thoughts on the market, on asset management, on obviously what you've been working on in your current projects as well with the Pentagon Property Academy. So thank you again, Kyle. It's really, really been awesome.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Yona. I really appreciate it. Thank you again.
And to our listeners, thank you guys for joining all the way to the end once again. And remember, the best advice comes only when you ask. Real quick, I have one question for you. Did you like this episode? If you did, I want to ask you a huge favor. See, the biggest thing that helps this podcast grow and that will spread this message to the whole world is that if you leave a review, a rating, and subscribe to the podcast. What that does is it basically tells the platforms that this podcast is out on is that you like my stuff and I'm doing something right. So take a few seconds out of your day, hit that subscribe button, leave a rating or review. I would be extremely grateful. Also, I want to hear from you guys. So I want to hear some feedback. If you have any questions for future episodes, please find me on LinkedIn. Send me a DM, a connection request, Yona Weiss, and I'd love to hear from you.